Hi, everyone. I am so pumped for this live stream. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Kyler Cheatham. I'll be your host here. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Christy Barber from Christy Barber Consulting. And I am so excited to bring you March Madness ERP small to medium sized business extravaganza. So today we're going to do something that's a little bit fun and do some rapid fire software comparisons when it comes to the SMB marketplace. And I'm just here to kind of facilitate our bracket. Hopefully you've seen it. I'll show it to you in just a second. So this will be the first round. And next week we will go into the second round of March Madness and ultimately crown a champion. But before we get into that, I want to give Christy, who's really the expert here, the chance to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about Christy Barber Consulting, and then we will get into it.
Awesome, thanks. So I'm Christy with Christy Barber Consulting. I am a financial tech expert, so kind of marrying along the lines of technology and finance, because why wouldn't that be more fun? As we always say, numbers and then technology to help understand what those numbers are. So I'm excited to meet with you all today and tell you all the things technology as we make our own tech bracket.
Very cool. So let's do this. So before I show you the bracket, we've got a bunch of different systems that we're going on to what we're going to be covering today. But you are as much a part of this as we are. So we can see your comments wherever you're commenting or viewing today. And we encourage you to kind of join the conversation. The point of doing something fun like this, Christy and I are both not provider specific, so we have that lens of being able to understand that every software system, every company is different. It has to be a partnership, it has to be a match. So having these types of conversations of what you want to look at is actually going to be very helpful. So we encourage you, if you disagree, that's cool, drop that in the comments too. It's all about making sure that we have a transparent conversation. So with that, I'm going to show you guys the bracket just real quickly so you can kind of see it. It was on our LinkedIn Live, but you should be able to see what that looks like. And this bracket specifically shows kind of the rapid fire comparisons that we'll be doing today. So we have our first rounds are going to be NetSuite versus Magento, Acumatica versus Shopify, Sage versus IFS, QuickBooks versus Xero, SAP Business One versus Workday, Microsoft D365 versus UKG, Odoo versus Infor, and last but certainly not least, Epicor versus Cispro. So where our goal, loose word, right, is to spend 2 minutes per each one of these comparisons and kind of move the next one to the next round, the winner of what that would be. Again, today we're focusing on small to medium sized business. So before we kind of get started, Christy, can you define what a small to medium sized business would be as far as just kind of like a company profile?
Yeah, so small and medium-sized business, I mean, there's a couple different things that come with it that are unique to the industry. And that's one thing I think to say before we jump into all of this.
Mhm.
Each company, you are unique in the industry that you're in, and some of these softwares will be for you, others will be not the right fit. And when we look at size, small businesses usually around up to 50 million, sometimes
Mhm.
100 million, depending where you are. In the medium, to me, what I see them mostly about 150 million, and then you kind of get categorized into you're a little bit larger organization. It's more of we'll call it a high medium size business, but the SMB world, I would say 150 under.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, that sounds good. So let's get into it. And again, we're just, experimenting with this format. So definitely let us know what you think of it. But the first one we're going to do, I'm going to set my watch for 2 minutes and we are going to do NetSuite versus Magento. So NetSuite, just to give you kind of a comprehensive comparison, is an old OG, I call it, cloud-based ERP solution, and it looks at things like financial management, CRM, e-commerce, all of those different things. And it's really an ideal solution for your first ERP solution, especially if you're moving from a QuickBooks. Any thoughts on kind of the overview of NetSuite before I go to Magento?
I think with NetSuite, something that's really great is it's the cloud based. It's really easy when you get on to the solution. It looks just like a web page. You're scrolling up and down. The financials in it are great because that's what they started out as. And it grows with you as a best of breed model. And it's not the all in one. So you can customize it as much or as little as you wish.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important, the scalability, especially for this type of business, because you really don't know, where you're going to scale. NetSuite is owned by Oracle. So obviously it's a very sophisticated and proficient platform that it's utilizing. So with that, let's kind of talk, which this comparison is quite opposite. Some of them are like, oh, this is gonna be really hard.
Yeah.
There, this one is quite opposite. So Magento, which you know much better than I do, Christy, but from my understanding, it's an open source kind of e-commerce based system that has these capabilities through kind of extensions, and it really focuses a lot on retail, right? If you are selling something online, and it kind of integrates with a lot of different ERP features, but might not be kind of a full suite that NetSuite is.
Exactly. Magento, which was purchased by Adobe Commerce. They're now known as Adobe Commerce, but everybody still knows them as Magento because that's what they've been. And they're a highly customized e-commerce solution as compared to some of the others that we'll talk through in the next few minutes here. But it does allow you to make a more comprehensive e-commerce solution. It's much more expensive because of that. There's a lot of development work that has to go into it, but you can make a lot of B2B sites. You can make B2C, you can make B2B2C, a whole bunch of different options with that, which are really cool when you have an e-commerce solution that it doesn't just cater to one type of e-commerce business. They can work with everything under the sun that you may have.
Absolutely. And I think the things that we focus in on a lot are the key differences. We look at integration, like how does that work, especially in an SMB environment where integrations can be very complex. They sound like they're plug and play, but a lot of times that they're not. So Magento, from my understanding, Christy, is that it requires a lot of kind of third-party plugins if you're looking for that type of comprehensive integration.
Yes.
Um, and then we also look at things like user experience, which NetSuite obviously has a really great user experience, but Magento is very versatile when it comes to that. But it will, because of the open source feature, a lot of times open source gives us that flexibility, but we think it costs less, but a lot of times to
It's more.
maintain it, yeah, it can be more operationally because you have to think of that total cost of ownership. So with 3 seconds left, um, which one is the winner here, Christy, Magento, or NetSuite?
I think we would have to go NetSuite just because we're kind of kicking things off and we need an ERP to start.
Yeah, absolutely. But Magento is a great
It's a great solution.
solution if you are looking for something that is a bit more kind of like stepping stool to ERP, right? And you are in an ERP or you're in a retail, very highly e-commerce environment. Definitely something that should be on your short list. A great partner to consider, but this round does go to
Yeah.
NetSuite. So next round, how you feeling?
Really
Good? Good? Yeah?
good.
Low stress? That's what we always
No
go for.
stress.
Um, so let's go to a question real quick before I just completely ignore the audience. So I know, Christy, you're running these, so you have to pull the question up if you want to show it. But so Adam asked, do you find Magento provides more opportunities to scale versus NetSuite when it comes to licensing escalators?
Interesting.
Yeah, so I have no idea. You
Yeah.
answer that.
I would say yes, because I know. So, one thing to think about is NetSuite does have its own e commerce solution that's built into itself and it can provide that. Magento does have a little bit more opportunity because it's always been an e commerce solution. It can scale at a different level, of which it has more customizations. And exactly to your point, like when it comes to licensing, um, you would have to see on a NetSuite side there's different licensing for who would be able to use it. Magento is I would just have licensing for the people that need to live in that solution, whether that's
Mhm.
my developer or maybe I have one or two e-commerce folks that are using it, and that would be it. And so licensing could kind of look very differently compared to when you're in ERP and you have a different license structure.
Mhm. And that's such a good point because that's so important to consider in that total cost of ownership. And
Mhm.
that's why it's super helpful to have someone like Christy that leads you through this process because those things you just don't think about. Software licensing is like nothing else in business. It's very confusing, especially with how it costs in the cloud or how licensing works with different systems. You want to make sure you have a good handle on that before you sign any contract. So, definitely a great question here. Okay, moving on to Acumatica versus Shopify.
Mhm.
So, just again, a quick kind of overview of the two systems. Acumatica is an ERP, again, cloud based, and it offers that modular type of architecture, financials, distribution, CRM. It's really known to flex and kind of scale. It's usually on every single SMB shortlist, unless I'm wrong.
Right.
Yeah. And then Shopify, again, we look at more. Everyone's heard of Shopify. You can use it even if you're like a one man show type of business. Very scalable. It's got some comprehensive ERP functionalities, but again, those third party integrations, great option for another e commerce platform that leads to kind of basic inventory management.
Mhm.
Anything to kind of add to those overviews or things that you've seen in these two selections head on head?
I think something that's really interesting about Acumatica is just its license structure, which is very different from most ERP solutions. It's based on number of transactions, not named users, like the majority of solutions have.
Mm.
And so that can be unique coming in if you're looking to cut costs and maybe you have a lower volume, it could come in significantly cheaper versus other solutions out there. It also does have that modular base where you have everything, but you can also, look at things and bring in comprehensive warehousing and inventory and all these other solutions. And then with Shopify, which is kind of it's that term that if you're e-commerce, you probably
Mhm.
have Shopify because
Yeah.
that's what everybody's familiar with because
Yeah.
they've done such a great job advertising. I think something that is unique about them is, to your point, it's a one-man show and it's a plug and play. You can go get a
Mhm.
Shopify account today and you can get your products set up in there and sold even if you're using a QuickBooks. You can utilize Shopify and have the data points flow back and forth with
Mhm.
some middleware in there. And I think that makes it really successful for people that are just getting their e-commerce business started.
Absolutely, and Acumatica actually integrates with Shopify. Like, it's known as kind of the mothership of all integrations. I don't even know a system that doesn't integrate with Shopify. That's
Exactly.
how good of a partner they've been in the marketplace. So a great option if you are maybe not ready for an Acumatica, but you want to have those certain systems. Maybe you're a smaller side of the SMB marketplace. Definitely a great piece. I think the usability of Shopify is also a great interface. It is plug and play, and you're able to do some of those things quite quicker and easier than you would with something like Acumatica, but Acumatica is just more sophisticated
Ex-
on the ERP side. So that said, which goes to this round, Christy, Acumatica or Shopify?
I think let's go an e-commerce route this time, and we'll
Ooh,
we'll go with it. We'll switch it up. Why not? we'll we'll pick an e-commerce and go with
okay. So,
Shopify.
Shopify it is, and I think that definitely when it comes to e-commerce, that's top tier, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that you definitely should have on your short list if you are considering an ERP functionality for any. And we talk about kind of the ERPs of the future
Mhm.
being more flexible. So that is kind of a modern day ERP, if you will. So
Yeah. And I think too, even if you're saying more of the modern flexibility just in the future too, that is something Acumatica has worked towards of just being a little bit different than having, what everybody else has done in their design.
yeah, absolutely. And people are, responding to your going with the
Yeah.
dark horse in in that, which I love. And so and I'll get back to you a few questions here that I will bring in. If you ask about any product we've already covered, we will go back and cover it. So, Adam says, I wonder if this is an upset in the making. Shopify is more tailored to the e-commerce high volume approach. That Acumatica often becomes more expensive when
Does.
you have high volume e-commerce. And you kind of touched on that a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that's why when you have a really high volume, Acumatica isn't the best fit for your company, because you end up paying a lot more than you would if you had a solution that was a named user. And
Yeah.
again, number of transactions is built into everything. Every ERP you use in some type of capacity just based on storage, but their model is, 100% based on transactions.
Absolutely. So, and going back to the question about Magento, just real quick, which ERP product can easily integrate with Magento?
It can easily integrate with any solution. It's more so, is that your choice and that's the one you want to use, but
Mhm.
it has an open API, and all of the ERP solutions more than likely that would be chosen by a company will be able to integrate with Magento.
Love that. Great questions, you guys. And then Mick said Adam loves a good upset. And I only mention that because Mick is the only person I guarantee on the stream that has actually been in March Madness as an actual player.
Exactly.
Christy and I are 5 foot flat, maybe on a good day.
On a great day.
So, yep, absolutely. All right, let's go to our next matchup here. We've got Sage Intact versus IFS, which this was one of those where I'm like, ooh, I don't know, like which one she's going to go with here. So these are two very sophisticated ERP systems. This is not kind of an e-commerce versus ERP. So Sage really focuses a lot on financial management, accounting. It's a great jump from QuickBooks, where you're like, this is not it, right? QuickBooks is
Mhm.
not working for me because I have robust requirements when it comes to financial reporting, compliance, those types of different things. IFS also offers, a broad suite of ERP application, but it focuses in kind of more of sophisticated or complex industries like aerospace and defense, heavy manufacturing. We look at IFS for like manufacturing execution systems, MES systems as well. So it's very sophisticated in that area. So anything to add to those two overviews?
One is with Sage Intacct. It's a great jump, like you said, from QuickBooks to a next solution. You usually see it the NetSuite or the Sage
Yeah.
Intacct is where people go. You also can keep it depending on your industry for a long time. I have a doctor's office right now. I'm working at $20 million in sales, and Sage Intacct is all they need,
Yeah.
because they have some ancillary solutions because of the medical industry that take care of anything that a larger ERP would need to do. So this can probably ride with them for a really long time as they grow and scale and work towards trying to double their current income. Sage Intacct is really easy to use. Navigation is pretty intuitive, where you kind of just jump in and you go. And then when you look at IFS is highly customizable when you need it, but it's also super robust system that gets you everything from managing inventory, and like you said, it's got that built-in management. When you're out in the shop and you want to look at all of your MES out there and know exactly how to track things, IFS has that put in there, versus a Sage Intacct. It's just a financial software that's an upgrade.
Absolutely. And I mean, I will just let the audience. I love when
I
the
know,
audience just does the work for me. That's
right?
really, my gold standard. So, do you think IFS scales down enough for SMBs trying to get off of QuickBooks?
I think it's a very fair question. I don't know. Sometimes it's going to depend again on the size of your company. So, for
Mhm.
instance, had a company that was $80 million, and I think they bought IFS when they were around 50 million, and it made sense for them because of the kind of things that they need to track and do. However, they got to a point where they moved off of it due to it being so complex and so
Mhm.
customizable that people started understanding how to develop, and they're like, hey, let's make it how we want to, our
Yeah.
process, instead of more of a best of breed process. So I think it does that. I think for the majority of SMBs, IFS is not the best fit. But again, if you're in a highly detailed manufacturing or you're in the aerospace and defense space, then it makes a lot more sense.
Absolutely. So, which one would you say this round goes to? IFS or Sage Intact?
I almost that this is a hard one because
Yeah.
it could go either way, but I think because we really want to focus so clearly on SMBs that Sage and Tech is the one that we should move forward with.
And I am not at all ashamed to say IFS is my favorite ERP system. So I totally agree with Christy's analysis here. I have a near and dear to my heart to IFS because I feel like they're very client focused. Every time I've worked with them, they go above and beyond to really meet the needs of their clients. But in this case, I totally agree. IFS would be overkill unless you were really needing those detailed, like asset management, project management type requirements that typically we don't see in an SMB environment. So definitely a good piece there. We got a lot of Magento questions, which
Yeah.
I'm like, nobody's gonna know what that is, but here I am. You guys proving me wrong. So while we like queue up the next two, let's double back on this question. What are the biggest challenges businesses face when integrating with Magento, and how can they be mitigated? And I would even say integrating with any flexible
Anything. Yeah.
e-commerce system. What does that look like?
So I think one of the biggest challenges with that is, do you have the correct development team to help integrate the solutions together? So it could be maybe you've already had an ERP and now you're looking to grow and bring an e-commerce solution. Do you have in-house the right people to do the integration? Or do you need to go out to market and find a partner that can bring that in? And even when you're asking a partner, like we do in so many of our conversations, are they the right partner to get the
Mhm,
job?
mhm.
I've worked with clients that have been working on something similar to that for a couple of years and it's failed every time. And it's coming down to the point of, man, we can't find the right partner to develop
Mhm.
what we need to come into the solution. So a lot of it is asking questions and making sure that you have the right partner or the right internal team to integrate those data points.
Absolutely. 100% agree on that analysis. Definitely great insight there. So going into our next one, which I'm definitely excited to hear what you think about this, QuickBooks versus Zero. And these have kind of Zero has come in as QuickBooks's competitor,
Mhm.
right? They've kind of like come into this space and saying like all of the things that everyone's like, oh, QuickBooks, they've kind of come in and tried to strengthen things like user friendly interface, integration capabilities, while QuickBooks has kind of owned this space forever. You start a business, you get QuickBooks. It's just kind of known to even people outside of the software space. It's been the incumbent in there so long that Zero has kind of come in to be a competitor. So this is really head to head, two very similar systems when looking at how to handle very small financial management. Would you agree?
I would agree. Yep.
And
And
something I just, yeah, you go ahead.
But I would say, to the point of them trying to be a competitor, I think Zero pushed really hard right before QuickBooks became QuickBooks Online, and
Yeah.
Zero was that first one. And then now things have changed up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So definitely two to very much consider. I would also say I know QuickBooks wants to be, but they are not an ERP. They really want to be, coming into the space and being very sophisticated in ERP functionalities. And who knows, maybe one day they will get there. We can't tell the
You
future.
can't tell,
But
no.
right now, we need to look at QuickBooks for financial management only,
Mm,
right? There's other things you can add, but they spend a lot of money on marketing. It's our job to tell you the truth, right? So we're
yep.
just here to drop the hard truth bombs up in here. So a few things to consider here. So one big thing about user limitations, QuickBooks has user limits on their pricing plans. Zero is unlimited users.
Mhm.
Again, kind of coming in to look at that. Pricing, Zero has tried to offer more affordable price plans compared to QuickBooks. But again, QuickBooks has a bit more advanced accounting features. So definitely something to consider. Both platforms integrate. Zero has been noted to be easier to integrate. But again, QuickBooks does go across a lot of integrations as well.
Yeah.
So anything to add to those kind of key differences?
I think some of it is just a lot of the navigation inside the system. To
Mhm.
me personally, I think QuickBooks is easier to use than Xero. And then I'll talk to other people and they think the other way around. And I think it's, whatever you're used to. I I like using some of the reporting features in QuickBooks better than what Xero has. But again, it kind of just depends what you want. Xero came out as the first cloud solution for
Mhm.
small businesses and when you were kind of get started. And then QuickBooks was slowly following suit on that. And so I think they grabbed some market share in the beginning and are slowly getting that. But it's still growing and trying to, in my opinion, kind of catch up. But this is one where I'd be curious to know what people think
Mhm.
of if we took a poll, do you prefer QuickBooks over Xero and why?
Yeah, I mean, for me, answering the full while I have the mic over here, no,
Yes.
right? So, I think I would go Xero. I think QuickBooks has just done a whole of bad management when it comes to client services. And of course, they are great for some things, but they really have had a hard time, and that's something that they just have to overcome that perception in the marketplace, and that's gonna take some time and some work
Yeah.
on their end. So that would be my vote. I think the people in here are like, does someone have to win every round? Which yes, we are in a tournament here. There's winners and losers. That's how life works. I don't know if you can tie in March Madness. That's going way too far into my sports
Yes.
knowledge. I am an IT nerd, so I don't know about that. So sorry. And then we do have a question for businesses planning to switch accounting software kind of in the future. Which platform makes the most sense for data migration and exporting kind of financial reporting? Which one would you say you would pick?
Oh gosh, it depends because there's certain parts that when you're trying to get data out of these solutions, it's very difficult to then move
Mhm.
from to an ERP solution. I've had people within QuickBooks and they have bill of materials in there that they've created, and it's almost virtually impossible to get those data points out of there and into an ERP. I think Zero is a tiny bit easier just because they started out cloud structure. And I don't know, QuickBooks Online, there's all I hear is, and again, would really have to ask a developer on this
Yeah.
point of I've heard that just the table structure of how QuickBooks Online is built is a little different. Um, but again, that part I don't know the development side as well, but I would be curious to know just on the coding side of things. But
Yeah.
what I've seen so far is Zero is a little bit easier to get the data points out, and usually it's just exporting to a CSV, and then whatever ERP you're using, they will have various tools and tables that you would load those data points into.
Yeah, and I just love that question because that's what you should be asking, right? When you're going through things, these things are important to me. Don't go into demos and let the vendor tell you what's important to you, right? Because they're trying to show you their system. You need to decide what your requirements are before you even look at that. And so when you come to someone like Christy and you say, "Hey, data migration, I'm really worried about that. I'm concerned about that. We have a very data heavy business. X, Y, and Z," then you can really run down those answers and Christy and team can help garner those for you. So
Mhm.
I love that question. Great question. Keep them coming. All right, you got to pick one: Zero or QuickBooks.
This is hard because I like both of them. Do you want to be my tie decider? You
No,
like
no,
Zero.
I'm not taking that on. You have to pick. You have to do it.
I think just because of my level of comfortability, we're gonna have to go QuickBooks on this
Okay.
one. Yep.
Okay. I think that's probably the right thing to do. Yeah, definitely. Don't. I'm glad you didn't take. Yeah, I'm glad you weren't influenced by my biases. So, all right. All right, so we are halfway through. We're going to keep moving through these. So we've got our first, second round of winners done. We've got NetSuite, we've got Shopify, we've got Sage, and we've got QuickBooks. So congratulations to bracket one, round one winners. We will go through all four of those next week, head to head. All right, moving on to bracket two. We have SAP Business One versus Workday. Another very interesting kind of head to head. SAP Business One is SAP's, small to medium sized business solution, including those financial, sales, inventory management. While Workday has been an HCM, human capital management system, historically, it does have great financial management offers, and it definitely has the ability to scale. So if you have a lot of, people management components, Workday could be a very good option for you. Anything to add to those two overviews?
I think sometimes with small businesses, they think they need a HCM solution like a Workday right
Mhm.
out of the gate. And in the beginning, you can get by with just utilizing the payroll company that you're using. Because I've had that question asked a lot of like, hey, do I need to be able to manage everything about my employees? And maybe they only have 10 or 20 employees. And it's like, no, we can easily do that all through the payroll solution. And then looking at SAP Business One, this one comes up a lot just because people are familiar with the SAP
Mhm.
name.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean that you're getting the same experience or the same software on their smaller solution. And it's something that we've seen over the last couple of years that they aren't really putting that much R&D into this
Right.
solution, and eventually will probably be sunset maybe in
Yeah.
some capacity. But I don't see that it really is growing into the great ERP that it once was.
Yeah, it's a really interesting because this because SAP Business One has really been an incumbent in this marketplace for a long time. There's specific even consultancies that only focus in SAP Business One. That's how, well known it is in the industry. And you have the whole other side where Workday has been incredibly successful HCM, but it's moved into more of an ERP space. It's added research and development, it's added AI components to come across the business as opposed to just HR. So kind of moving in different directions, if
Yep.
you will, in the industry. So they both have, so key differences, you know, is SAP Business One really looks at those small to medium sized integrate or businesses, and then Workday usually is in larger businesses, focusing in HR and financial management. Industry focus, there's not really one here. They could go across any industry, but definitely a different journey for each one of those systems.
Yep.
So when it comes to, I'll let the audience do some questions here on this. Do you think SAP B1 is young enough to compete with an athlete like Workday? Wow, they're getting like spicy. I love your live streams. You have the funniest audience.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's good. I don't see that it can really,
yeah,
because I mean, you look at so many of the reports even in Business One, and they're PDFs. They're not drill down
yeah.
functionality. You're like, all right, now we're getting back to our Great Plains days where
Let
we
me get my
can't
glasses. Yeah,
do everything that we need to do. So I don't see it really keeping up with all of the new technology out there. And again, who knows, would it ever be able to even have AI in it? If
yeah,
it's so old and it can't keep up
absolutely.
with different solutions like this, and that's where the world is going.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much focus on SAP S4 HANA. Like we know that's like a huge industry issue right now. Adam said, or would they blow an ACL? Which
I
I love IT jokes.
love it.
Yeah. So with that said, who are you going to choose? SAP
You got to
Business
go Workday for sure.
Workday. Okay, Workday it is. All right. So next head to head here, we have D365, Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central, that's
Mhm.
important, versus UKG. So these are two, again, kind of all encompassing systems. Microsoft Dynamics Business Central, it is kind of a business management. It integrates with a lot of different functions, operations, sales, customer service. It's great for medium to small businesses. UKG has been known to specialize in human capital management and workforce management specifically, but it offers a lot of really comprehensive functions across the business too. Very well known in the public sector as well. UKG of managing a lot of different things when it comes to like citizen engagement and those types of needs and services. So I think functionality, we know that D365, and correct me if I'm wrong, is really more comprehensive than
Oh
UKG. It just is. UKG, on the other hand, you are looking at, a small fish in a big pond when it comes to Microsoft. UKG is very partner focused. I know a lot of them personally. They very much are focused on their client services, and believe in that type of mission. So, definitely a different kind of experience. We all know that Microsoft, the VAR community, can be very, very challenging when it comes to implementation. So, definitely two different um, options there. Anything to add to those key differences?
I think with Business Central, you see it popping up a lot more in the SMB world. But again, it goes back to the partner
Yeah.
issue. Also, it can be extremely difficult to find a Microsoft partner that it can be present enough to want to take the job and implement the software. And I think people too, they think that when they buy Business Central, they're just paying for a user license, similar to, hey, I'm going to get a Office 365 license and it costs me, $12 a month. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
probably what Business Central is. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, that's part of the overall price, but that's not how their pricing structure works. I actually had somebody say that. They're like, this is a really cheap solution. It's probably gonna cost me $120 a month. And I'm like, no, it really
No.
isn't.
Who
So
told you that?
exactly. And I think the one thing that people do like about BC is it has the Microsoft look and flow. And so when you
Mhm.
do get into the solution, there's familiarity if you use their products on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Yep, definitely. So, which one are you going to go with?
I think we'd have to do just Microsoft so that we have,
Yeah.
unless we want to take two HCMs against each other, we could do that because UKG is a lot of that. It does a lot with
Yeah.
they were known with Kronos before
Yeah.
UKG merged, and
Well,
so
let's let this question kind of battle it out for you here. So, do you think that Microsoft is investing enough in BC Business Central for them to beat out UKG, who
hmm,
is part of a big acquisition
right.
too of a lot of different systems?
And UKG has put so much into what they're doing. I see it a lot more, even at clients' offices. When you
Mhm.
kind of walk around, you're like, "Oh, here's your time clock that
Mhm.
people are
Yeah,
using
they
UKG to
really do
put in,"
care. Yeah.
and
Mhm.
it's a phenomenal solution. And I've used it, especially if you have 300 employees.
Mhm.
Works really, really well. Microsoft Business Central, I know they want to keep this, but are they putting more money and investing in those larger the F&O software that they have for the
Mhm.
major companies? Good question. Maybe let's go with UKG because I would like to take UKG up against Workday.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man. We might have to get them both on the phone. But again, like in my first thought is like if we got both those vendors on the phone, Workday would not talk to us. UKG would absolutely talk to us. So like
Mhm.
you have to take those things into consideration. That doesn't mean you should choose your best friend system. That just means that you should take into consideration which one am I going to be able to work with and then bring, someone in like Christy that's able to help you navigate all of those different relationships because that's just the vendor, right? Then you have the system integrator and you have your third party integrations. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to selecting a new ERP software. Cool. Okay. So down to Odoo versus Infor. Again, very interesting matchup here. Odoo has a bit of a cult following, and
Mhm.
Infor is really a great product as well. So Odoo is kind of the king of open source ERP. It offers a variety of business applications, really great technology, as long as you're able to handle an open source ERP system. And that is a big question. It is not just a plug and play. It can be more affordable, but it also your IT team needs to know how to handle that and maintain it. Infor Cloud Suite is really kind of looking at a lot of manufacturing distribution, but a very good, robust functionality, advanced planning, scheduling. They're known for that in the industry. They're always on kind of MES shortlist. They are known for kind of similar to an IFS function, but they are a great all around ERP. They don't, neither has an industry focus. For functionality, you're kind of going against flexibility and sophistication in these two. Odoo is incredibly flexible. It's definitely more affordable if you can manage it in the right way. But Infor is really all you need. It is all you need, and that's a plug. You're going to buy it and you're going to keep it, right, for
Mm.
that amount of time. Also, both I think have a great partner network, in my opinion, that really help their clients through this. So this one is definitely different. It's one of those where it's like, oh, it so depends on what you need. But definitely a different matchup here. So, what are your thoughts on the kind of those key differences?
So I think with Odoo, something that's unique is it's highly, highly customizable. If you have your own IT team,
Mhm.
you can basically build out this solution to make it whatever you want. You can, the go and flow with how that is, which keeps the cost down really cheap compared to when you're looking at a different type of an ERP solution. They also sell bulks of hours where they will, configure and implement and get it set up for you. And so that's one thing that's really unique about it. And you've seen too over the last couple of years how much advertising they're even putting out. I know going to different airports and things, I see a lot of their
Oh, yeah.
ads all around. And then you look at something like an Infor, which is great, like you said, manufacturing distribution. It's been around for a long time. It's a great scalable solution that for the small business world to start out on their site line, which is their cloud suite line, you can get up to over or close to $1 billion before you're really outgrowing the
Yeah.
solution in a lot of ways. And that's something you want to look at where I'm not having to change, a solution up couple years in
Mhm.
because oh gosh, we hit a growth spurt and we weren't planning for it. And so that's something I really do appreciate about Infor. I do like their planning. I do like a lot of the functionality that they have to offer, especially when it comes to being on the floor and managing your operations.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely two considerations. Odoo, purple, flashy branding, very cool. Definitely the cool kid in the ERP circle, and Infor is just not. It's kind of not as cool of a brand. Great system, great
Yes.
people that work there, excellent options. It's just not as flashy as Odoo in the marketplace, nor is it as flexible. You absolutely can build completely your own system, exactly what you need on Odoo. Infor is that's not quite the same, though there is flexibility to, of course, what package. So Adam asked, do you need a bigger IT team to implement Odoo or Infor?
Odoo for sure because there's so much management for it.
Mhm.
The IT side of things for Infor, I have companies that have 1 to 3 people max that are just managing, and that's where they're handling the reports. They may be changing up the user licenses, building different roles out, and working with the implementation team to do some minor type of work because more than likely you'll have an ongoing maintenance contract with the Infor team and they're in the background really taking care of those things for you, which makes it easier for small businesses when you have limited to no IT team at all.
Mhm. Yeah. Definitely a consideration, and a lot of things that we see clients get stuck on with those open source systems. They kind of get engaged in like this is the new frontier of ERP. There's a lot of, AI talk, and you can go in and you can really pick and choose a la carte ERP system, but you have to remember this is still the core of your system. So not only are you responsible for managing it, you're responsible for teaching everyone in the organization how to effectively do that. And that doesn't happen just at implementation, right?
No,
That's
and
an
not at all.
ongoing journey that you have to be able to know that, hey, I have the team and the time to invest in. So
Yeah.
definitely good things to think about there. Which one is it, Christy?
Mhm.
In
This
for
one to me is going to be an easy one. It would be Infor just because for the SMB world, Odoo is that's really difficult and puts a lot of stress
Mhm.
on a new business to be able to manage all the ins and outs of being the IT manager.
Very cool. Awesome. Okay, this round goes to Infor. So, last but certainly not least on our head to head, we have Epicor versus Syspro. So, definitely kind of another one that is good but different, right? And looking at these two. So Epicor is honestly very similar to M4. There are a lot of, involved in the same conversations. But it again is very strong ERP solution, mid tier two solution, even, going into the tier one area, but used by a lot of very sophisticated businesses. It's really known for its distribution, manufacturing, comprehensive supply chain. You can see every layer of your production with Epicor. It's just a great choice to have on your short list, especially if you have Infor on there. It kind of depends on the business, which one is the best match and which team is supporting you
Yeah.
is the best culture fit between the two. And CISPRO, that's it's not involved in a lot of ERP conversations because it's definitely more focused on like the inventory management, the production, the financials, manufacturing, and distribution. So if you were a very heavy manufacturing or inventory business, you might look at these two head to head, but they're not always involved in the same conversation. So when we look at those key differences, they both have very much presence in the manufacturing and space. However, Epicor is noted to be kind of more of a holistic type of
Yeah.
system. Um, and then also, CISPRO, I should say, it really is involved in a lot of integrations as well. But again, we kind of touched on the challenge of an integration type approach when it comes to a core ERP system. So, what are your thoughts on kind of those key differences that I noted?
Yeah, I would say that. I hear that a lot with CISPRO, just around the inventory management side of things. That's usually what people come to the table with when I chat with them is, oh, we know this does ERP or the inventory management side of things really, really well. Then when you have conversations with folks that are, have questions about Epicor, it's, hey, we have a complex, bill of materials and we need to be able to manage and track all along the way what is true WIP and look at the MES and what's it called? Epicor does a really, really good job
Mhm,
of managing all of that that's out in the field. I think it does manufacturing really, really well. I hear conflicting things sometimes around the planning part of just
mhm,
is it easier to use than other solutions out there? But usually when it comes to the floor, you hear it's like nonstop, really good
mhm,
reviews around it, especially the Epicor Kinetic version, which is their
mhm,
cloud version, the newer version.
mhm.
Folks that sometimes still use the older on-prem versions, the BizTracks and all of that,
Mhm.
they don't love life as much right now because of just limitations of being on-prem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll find that with a lot of on prem services, although the cloud is not always the solution. And
Mhm.
that's a huge myth in the industry is, the cloud is better, the cloud is cheaper. That is not always true. So definitely a consideration. We have a question here. Does CISPRO have a big enough base to make them actually competitive against Epicor?
I think you see them, but you don't see them at the same time. One of those things, they're not doing the branding. I don't see them at different events or whatnot. It's more so when I hear about CISPRO, it's a client that has done some research and has
Hmm.
found them. When I'm looking at solutions to find the best ERP for a client, it's not normally one that I see gets pulled into it
Hmm.
just because the functionality isn't there a lot of times. Again, you're like, it's great if it has inventory management and that's what you're
Hmm.
known for, fantastic, but I need some other things in there that these other solutions have that Cispro just isn't there yet.
Yeah, yeah. I would say when I'm looking at CISPRO, I put it more in like the best of breed
Yeah.
category for a specific client that needs a very heavy inventory management piece. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, CISPRO. But again, I don't think we've ever, and maybe you have, Christy, when we're not hanging out at conferences together. But I've never met someone from CISPRO. I've
Me
never
either.
even like talked to someone, or someone's never come up to me and be like, "Hey, can we talk?" So I think they don't have a huge presence, but are very good at doing some things really well. And that if you want to take a best of breed approach, or even if you have an ERP, a core ERP, and you want to look at something that's more sophisticated in inventory management, we just don't see a lot of SMBs there yet, right? To
Right.
have like that type of need for that functionality. So I think we kind of answered our own question,
You
but
did.
who is the winner?
I would say Epicor.
Awesome. All right. So, my friends, we've got 5 minutes left in this conversation. Definitely drop in your last questions or thoughts. So, next week, same time, same place. We drop the link on LinkedIn. We will go through round two. So, we will do, let me see if I can do this. We will do NetSuite versus Shopify. We will do Sage versus QuickBooks. We will do Workday versus UKG, which is probably the biggest, head to head there. And then we will do Infor versus Epicor, which also is a huge head to
Also,
head.
yep.
Yeah. So, and then the next week we will do the final rounds and crown the champion that we think that you should choose or at least have on your short list. If you have questions about like, hey, I saw this conversation, I have certain functionalities that I need for my SMB, I, would definitely encourage you to DM Christy. I know she's very active on LinkedIn or comment on this. She can always go back in and answer these questions. But it really truly depends on what you need as far as a business case and your budget. SMBs have, huge budget constraints, rightfully so. This is a huge purchase. So you need to really consider what you're looking at and what you can afford in that type of conversation. So, any closing thoughts, recommendations overall when looking at these different systems, Christy?
Nope, I think we highlighted all the major things that if you're an SMB and kind of just questioning and wanting to know more, I think this is a good comprehensive short way to highlight all of them and let you know more.
Absolutely. And this is a good question to kind of end on. When do you know you're ready to move to one of these versus something larger? And maybe like kind of revising the question, how do you know when you're really ready for an ERP system as an SMB?
I think the biggest thing is normally you're on a QuickBooks or a Zero, something like that, or Excel spreadsheets, and you know that you can't get a good health check of how your business is doing. You
Hmm.
don't have good reporting. You don't know what true costs are because you don't have cost accounting. You
Hmm.
don't have a way to manage comprehensive bill of materials when you're
Hmm.
manufacturing things. And those are usually those key points to say, hey, I need to get off this tier 4 type of software that
Yeah.
I'm using. But then you can also look at it to maybe you have an older version of an ERP solution because you moved to that. Maybe you're on an old Sage or an old Epicor, and it just doesn't have the newer technology that some of the solutions have today. And if you do a true evaluation and see, hey, I know if I have these new data points in here that I can measure, I see that I can get an ROI by investing in a newer solution, and I know it will add extended value to the organization, then I think it starts making sense to have that conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think you have a video on this, right?
Yes.
On your YouTube channel. So, if you and specifically for QuickBooks too. Like if you are QuickBooks, I know she does a great series of like when you know you graduated from QuickBooks and then also how there's like red flags that are going on in the organization. Your people hate you, you can't
Yep.
do
All the
all
things.
these different things. And then, how to really kind of understand the ERP conversation, which is half the battle. A lot of times, especially as a founder or something like that, you're like, this is not my wheelhouse, man. It's just it's just definitely something that you need help to have that conversation. Anybody does,
Yep.
to really understand their requirements, how it works, and how they're looking at the future of technology, especially enterprise technology, because that is something that is really evolving, especially right now.
Hmm. It is.
Well, thank you so much, Christy, for taking us through this. This has been a really fun
It's been fun.
conversation. We're excited. We're taking votes for the next winners. If you want to vote on that head-to-head comparison, we'll be back next week to kind of have that next level conversation. Thank you all for your great comments and questions. Definitely, it's so fun when you guys engage in the conversation. So with that, we will see you next week. And thank you so much to you, Christy.